Chapter 1356 Love Triangle. Chapter 1356 Love Triangle. Sichu Lin, what are you playing at? Li Ruotong shouted immediately. Sichu Lin pointed at Ding Ping, and said, who does this brat think he is? He is just an outsider, a minor character that is merely in the mountain river tier. And you actually dare to be so close with him? What position are you placing me in? TSK, this looked like a love triangle. Ling Han and the others did not speak. This was a matter that was best left to the people involved to settle themselves. What business is it of yours who I am with? Li Ruotong was also furious. Sichu Lin suppressed his anger, and patiently asked, could it be that you don't know that our two clans have the intention to match us together? So what? I don't like you at all, Li Ruotong declared resolutely. Sichu Lin burst into anger, and exclaimed, what part of me is worse than him? In terms of cultivation talent, my bloodline is the purest in the last million years of our Sichu clan. How could this brat compare to that? In terms of cultivation level, I am already in the high extreme of the sun-moon tier, and how is that not millions and millions of times stronger than him? In terms of background, even my finger is thousands of times nobler than him. In terms of looks, I am handsome and dashing, whereas he is just ordinary and average. Pu. Hearing his final words, Ling Han and the others could not help but splutter in laughter. Sorry, you are too fierce-looking, and still dare boast that you are incredibly handsome. This was really a little funny. As it happened, Jiang Yefeng was very sarcastic. Forcibly suppressing his emotions, said, it's quite all right. His skin is just a little blue, he doesn't have much green on his head. Damn you. Sichu Lin was furious, and shot out a punch at Jiang Yefeng. A circular divine pattern had formed on his fist, shining brilliantly. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden moved, and with a soft tap, the divine pattern immediately collapsed. She was at the peak stage of the pinnacle level of the sun-moon tier, stronger than Sichu Lin by who knew how many times. Mrs. is formidable. Jiang Yefeng immediately raised his hands and cheered. Sichu Lin's eyes involuntarily narrowed, yet a bewitched expression also appeared on his face. This woman was very strong, but also very beautiful. He felt wary, but at the same time felt his heartbeat quicken. He withdrew his hand, and swept an eye over the group, asking, do you all plan to start a war with the Sichu clan? Sichu Lin, you are still unqualified to represent the whole Sichu clan, Li Ruotong exclaimed immediately. Sichu Lin humphed, and retorted, the union between the two of us is the wish of the elders of both clans, yet you are now fooling around with this brat. This would not only drive the Sichu clan into fury, but even the Li clan would not support your side. Li Ruotong's expression shifted slightly. The clan indeed wished to betroth her to Sichu Lin, and had given her much mental counseling, yet she had always rejected them resolutely. But now that she had pledged herself to Ding Ping without any of their approval, the elders of the clan would definitely be furious if this was known to them. It's fine. Even if the sky collapsed, I will be able to hold it up, Ling Han finally interrupted, and said, since you are now together with Ding Ping, you can also be considered my disciple. Here, this is a gift to celebrate our first meeting. With a flick of his finger, a pill vial flew towards Li Ruotong. Involuntarily, Li Ruotong caught hold of the pill vial. She felt as if the words Ling Han spoke had a supreme will interlaced within them, and she could only obey. This gave her a shock because while she knew that Ding Ping's natural talent was outstanding, she had never thought that his master would also be very powerful. She opened the vial, and poured out a blood-colored alchemical pill that was covered with divine patterns. The moment the alchemical pill appeared, it actually began to spin, wanting to flee out of her grip. This. At first, Li Ruotong had not thought that Ling Han would be giving her any divine pill, but as a noble daughter of the Li clan, she still had the ability to make discerning judgment. This alchemical pill was about to gain a will of its own. Usually, only alchemical pills that were at least level 10 and above had the possibility of gaining a consciousness of their own, but it was not impossible for alchemical pills below level 10, either. However, this would have to be a saint pill in its grade, and only then could it possibly nurture out a consciousness. The medicinal effects of this kind of alchemical pill would not decline as time passed. On the contrary, because it had developed a consciousness of its own, it possessed its own life and vitality, and would be able to absorb the essence of the heaven and earth, making the medicinal effects even stronger. If an even longer time passed, the alchemical pill would even be capable of taking human form and stepping onto the path of cultivation. It was not impossible for it to become an elite in its own right, either. A berserk blood spirit pill. Her discerning ability was extraordinary. She immediately recognized this alchemical pill, and she was overjoyed at this. This could possibly allow her to save 10,000 years' time of cultivation. What? Sichu Lin was also extremely stunned. The berserk blood spirit pill has always had no lack of buyers, but with no one willing to sell. Even he had only heard of this kind of divine pill, yet had never had the opportunity to ingest one. If he had a few divine pills like this, he would have been able to reach the peak stage of the sun-moon tier a few hundreds of thousands years earlier, and have more time to attempt breaking through to the heavenly body tier. Li Ruotong was both stunned and ecstatic. She held on to the alchemical pill, not knowing what to say. "Quick, thank my master." Ding Ping elbowed her gently. "Many thanks for the gift, master." Li Ruotong hurriedly bowed fully. Ling Han waved her off dismissively. As the alchemy emperor, and with a treasure like the Black Tower, the least of his concerns were alchemical pills. Sichu Lin's eyes turned and focused on Ling Han. 1,000,000,000 true origin stones, and casually tossing out a berserk blood spirit pill, added with the hatred from having his betrothed snatched from him, caused his killing intent to boil. Humph. He turned and left. Presently, he was weak on his own. Even if it was just Li Ruotong, he might not be able to handle her, what more when there was that exquisite beauty whose abilities were superior to his. If he chose to make a move, that would be the action of an idiot. Don't mind him. When the auction ends, we will leave this place, Ling Han said calmly. Though he was still only in the low extreme of the heavenly body tier, he might still have the ability to put up a fight even against an opponent in the peak stage of the heavenly body tier. The important thing now was the highest jade essence heart. This was what he had promised old man Shu, and he was not a person that would go back on his word. Since they still had time, Ling Han studied new pill recipes. Now that he was now in the heavenly body tier, he had also extended the maximum limit of refining alchemical pills. He could now concoct level 9 to level 12 alchemical pills. On the other side, he took out that bottle of spiritual liquid from the Stone Emperor and added a large amount of precious herbs, causing its effects to become even more outstanding. This could greatly increase cultivation level, though it was not as amazing as the berserk blood spirit pill. However, it should be known that he was now in the heavenly body tier, and increasing a minor level would add another 10 million years to his lifespan. Correspondingly, increasing his cultivation level had also become incredibly slow. After all, this was the immortal realm, not the celestial realm. There were no methods that could be so nature-defying. Ling Han did not rush things. His lifespan was still incredibly long, and taking it step by step to strengthen his foundations of every cultivation level to the maximum and establish a sturdy Dao foundation would qualify him to compete with the great prodigies of the celestial realm once he managed to make his way there. The Stone Emperor was a descendant of rock spirits, and had a pure bloodline. Thus, the spiritual liquid extracted from his body was also extremely nutritious, involuntarily causing Ling Han to feel much longing. Should he look for this friend of his in advance and have the latter supply a little more spiritual liquid? But he quickly shook his head. If this was found out by the Stone Emperor's old man, he would probably be beaten into pulp. In these 10 days, Ling Han's cultivation level advanced steadily, but he was still very far from the middle stage of the low extreme. And presently, the auction was finally about to begin. The Sichu clan residence. Sichu Lin was respectfully accompanying a young man. This was an esteemed guest. If it wasn't because there was an auction for the highest jade essence heart being held in this place, he could not possibly have been tempted to come here, and the Sichu clan had also paid a very heavy price to attain the right to entertain this noble guest. If Ling Han was present, he would have been able to recognize with a single look that this so-called noble guest was Zhao Ku. Young Master Ku, I saw a beauty a few days ago. She is exquisitely beautiful, and can be considered an unprecedented beauty. Sichu Lin smirked cunningly. He wanted to lure Zhao Ku over to Ling Han. This pervert would definitely have designs on the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and with that, conflict would definitely arise between Zhao Ku and Ling Han. When a man is said to be having green on his head, especially when it's a green hat, it means that his wife-girlfriend has cheated on him. Chapter 1357 Attracting Hostility. Chapter 1357 Attracting Hostility. Oh, how beautiful. Zhao Ku's eyes involuntarily lit up. He'd pathetically fled back to the Zhao clan, and could not avoid a heavy scolding from his old man. But who asked him to be Zhao Zuyi's only son? Naturally, he could not bear to reprimand him seriously, so once he heard the news of the highest jade essence heart being on auction, he scrambled over. Naturally, the more life-saving treasures, the better. However, Ling Han had practically robbed him clean, and he had been scolded heavily by his old man as well, so it was natural that he was extremely displeased. Thus, he also planned to drive away his worries with this trip, and women, especially beautiful women, were naturally the best option for driving away his worries. Hence, he was naturally tempted the moment he heard the word beauty, and in a level like theirs, ordinary beauties naturally need not be specially mentioned. They had to be top-grade beauties. I guarantee that young Master Ku will be satisfied, Sichu Lin said mysteriously. Then bring me over quickly. Zhao Ku was displeased. There was a woman like that, yet he actually still used ordinary beauties to entertain him the day before. What was he thinking? Sichu Lin's face darkened involuntarily. Aren't you too quick to become heartless? However, firstly, Zhao Ku's background was more powerful, and he himself was in the heavenly body tier, and secondly, he still had to depend on Zhao Ku to deal with Ling Han, so he naturally did not want to offend him. He could only smile awkwardly, and said, I will immediately bring young Master Ku to find that exquisite beauty. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Zhao Ku was excited, and immediately stood up. Idiot. Trash. Sichu Lin thought in his heart. If his old man was an Eternal River tier elite, and he was the only son as well, he was sure he would definitely have reached the height of the peak stage of the heavenly body tier. His expression did not reveal his thoughts. Leading Zhao Ku out the doors, he headed in the direction of the auction house. He had long since done his investigation. Ling Han and his group also wanted the highest jade essence heart. In truth, who didn't? Ling Han had only brought the heavenly phoenix divine maiden with him. The couple headed to the auction house. Their only target was the highest jade essence heart, so there was no need to get their whole group involved. After we get hold of the highest jade essence heart, will we be returning to the joint peace planet to meet your empress lover? The heavenly phoenix divine maiden asked as they walked. Ling Han involuntarily shivered. This fierce woman was still feeling jealous. He thought for a moment, and then replied, we have to return to Big Trade City first. After all, I promised to teach someone to concoct the Berserk blood spirit pill, so who knows if the person has learnt how or not yet. A woman, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden asked. Could you not be so sharp? Ling Han smiled bitterly. This was really a coincidence. Whether it was Lin Yuqi or Han Xinyan, they were all women, and they were also above-average beautiful women. Furthermore, Lin Yuqi was a great bewitching beauty that could easily intoxicate a man with a single look. If this was known to the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, she would definitely turn the heavens over in her jealousy. Just how much are you still hiding from me? Heavenly phoenix divine maiden stuck out a hand at Ling Han's waist and pinched his flesh strongly. Ling Han naturally would not feel pain with how strong his physique was, but he still put on a pretense as if he was in unbelievable pain, and exclaimed, Wife, not so hard, not so hard. Stop pretending. Heavenly phoenix divine maiden declared, her face expressionless. This Casanova, she herself became a widow for him in the immortal realm, while he, on the other hand, played the romance game everywhere he went. Just the mere thought of it made her angry. Ling Han saw that there was no one in the surroundings, and immediately pushed her into a small alley. Pushing this great beauty against the wall, he lowered his head and kissed the beautiful lips of the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Woo! The heavenly phoenix divine maiden struggled, but soon lost her wits, and was only able to think about fiercely responding to his kiss. Ling Han couldn't help but feel rueful. If he had known that this move would have been so effective, Why would he have had to go everywhere to various ancient sites to seek a way of becoming stronger in the past? Pervert. After a long while, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden's face was completely flushed. Her fierce attitude was no more, and she had completely become soft and dazed. Ling Han snickered, and asked, "Wife, when are we going to consummate our marriage?" "Go to hell." The heavenly phoenix divine maiden stretched out a fist, ready to pummel Ling Han. However, her present battle prowess was already far inferior to Ling Han's. He merely stretched out his hand and caught hold of her wrist, and taking advantage of the opening, kissed her fiercely again. Furthermore, he touched her everywhere he could, causing her pale jade-like complexion to become enchantingly flushed all over. Ling Han couldn't help but feel his heart throb. He really wanted to immediately bring this beauty into the Black Tower for a bout of intimacy, but when he recalled the highest jade essence heart, he still forcibly repressed the urge. He merely embraced this beauty in his arms, and slowly calmed his rapidly beating heart. Damn pervert. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden punched him lightly. Why do women all like to say that? Ling Han was not such an idiot that he voiced out this question. Otherwise, this jealous lover that he had just calmed down would probably fly once more into jealousy. They left the small alley, and continued their way to the auction house. Not long after, the auction house appeared within their sight. "Young Master Ku, she's here. She's here." At the main doors of the auction house, Sichu Lin was stretching his head and looking here and there. When he spotted Ling Han walk over with the heavenly phoenix divine maiden beside him, he couldn't help but look pleased. Hihi, just wait for death. Unfortunately, the brat that had snatched his woman was actually absent. Zhao Ku looked in the direction he was pointing at, and immediately looked stunned. However, it was only a moment, and this stunned expression immediately became one of fear. He naturally remembered the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. True enough, when his eyes slightly slanted to the side, they caught sight of Ling Han. The coldness in his heart immediately increased 100-fold. His whole person was almost frozen solid. "Young Master Ku, this girl is not bad, right?" Sichu Lin did not notice in the slightest, and was still proudly talking by his side. Ling Han, who had already walked close enough, calmly asked, "What's not bad?" Sichu Lin naturally was willing to become the lackey. He stood on the steps and looked down on them. He pointed at Ling Han, and exclaimed, "Young Master Ku is interested in your female companion. You are very fortunate. Quickly deliver your female companion, and young Master Ku may perhaps grant you an important position." Every word was devastating. Having to surrender his own woman and still becoming someone's lackey? Was that considered fortunate? "Oh, is that right?" Ling Han looked at Zhao Ku smilingly. "Not bad, your sister." Zhao Ku suddenly went crazy and gave Sichu Lin a serious beating. He was naturally furious. He had just fled from Ling Han's grasp, yet Sichu Lin actually pushed him back into the fire pit. Fuck, what enmity was there between them that he actually screwed him over like this? "Let's see if I won't beat you to death, bastard." In the first place, Zhao Ku was a standard idle young master. There were really not that many people in the whole Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire that would make him wary, and this mere heavenly body tier level force actually dared trick him. Now, he truly was of a mind to beat Sichu Lin to death. Ah! Sichu Lin screamed in pain. He was completely confused. Could it be that Zhao Ku's taste was so different from the masses? What would seem like an exquisite beauty in the eyes of others would actually be a hideous hag to him? If that was not the case, why would he be so furious? "Young Master Ku, why are you hitting me?" He grabbed onto his head. With his abilities, he was naturally no match for Zhao Ku, and the question of his life or death was merely a single whim of Zhao Ku. "Not only do I want to hit you, I also want to kill you." Zhao Ku threatened menacingly. This guy actually dared to incite him to snatch the woman of a bringer of misfortune like Ling Han. Wasn't this trying to kill him? "What enmity do I have with you?" Chapter 1358, Why did you hit me? Chapter 1358, Why did you hit me? Peng. 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 Sichu Lin screamed in pain. Though Zhao Ku was furious, he felt even more wronged. Why was he being so pummeled horribly for no reason like this? "Young Master Ku, what exactly did I do wrong?" Young Master Ku, have mercy. I only helped you find a beautiful woman. If you are not satisfied, we can find another one. Find another your sister. Zhao Ku's eyes were about to breathe fire. He actually dared to still remind him of this. He was even more furious. If he could, he naturally wanted to fool around with this kind of exquisite beauty. But more importantly, Ling Han had a Genesis tier-level background, and even his decree was not effective against him, so how could he afford to trifle with this kind of bringer of misfortune? You bastard, I want to pull out your tendons and remove your skin. Zhao Ku continued to thrash him horribly. He was a standard spoilt young master, so what would he actually fear? One punch from him, and Sichu Lin's arm was ripped off and his bone broken. It was a mere few punches, and Sichu Lin was beyond recognition, not far off from death. What was pitiful was that Sichu Lin still had no idea why he was being beaten. How innocent. Stop. With a cold humph, a figure leaped down from the second floor. He was a tall, sturdy old man that looked to be in his 60s to 70s. However, his body was solid and well built, his vitality extremely vigorous. He was a powerful figure in the Sichu clan, Sichu Genuan. Though he was not on the level of Grand Elders, all those who had advanced into the heavenly body tier would be considered mighty figures. Furthermore, he was in the high extreme, and was capable of matching Zhao Ku. A minor quarrel among the juniors would be fine, but now, it was obvious that death would result soon. Thus, no matter how powerful Zhao Ku's background was, he could not possibly sit by and watch. Otherwise, if a member of the Sichu clan had been beaten to death in Gathering Wind City, how would they be able to face others in future? Old wretch, you dare boss me around? Zhao Ku showed fully the attitude of a profligate young master. Facing forces that could not match his own clan, he would dare offend them to the extreme. Sichu Genuan almost exploded in fury. Ever since he had stepped into the heavenly body tier, when had anyone ever insulted him as an old wretch right to his face like this? He humphed, and demanded, let him go. He was also familiar with the way a person like Zhao Ku had in handling matters, so he did not bother to talk reason with him. Instead, he directly told the latter to release the hostage. What if I don't? Zhao Ku was completely nonchalant. Aside from Ling Han, who had a Genesis tier-level background which he could not compete with, there was really no one he truly took to heart. Even for those of the current imperial family, he was not very wary, either. Wouldn't it all come down to a competition of their respective fathers? Then I can only commit an offense. Sichu Genuan moved, and grabbed out at Zhao Ku. However, he observed proper behavior in his movement. His purpose was only to save Sichu Lin. You dare make a move against me? Zhao Ku humphed coldly. A silvery light flashed over his body, and divine might spread out like he himself was a god that counterattacked against Sichu Genuan. The silver dragon armor was active, providing a practically invincible defense for him. This was a defense that could not be broken through by anyone below the Eternal River tier. Sichu Genuan was only capable of equaling Zhao Ku at first, but now, with the silver dragon armor, he was naturally completely at a disadvantage. This was still because Zhao Ku had given the majority of his god tools over to Ling Han. Otherwise, the former would only need to summon a decree, and he would be able to instantly blast Sichu Genuan into dust. Thankfully, Sichu Genuan had no intention to have an all-out fight to the death with Zhao Ku. He deliberately tempted Zhao Ku to pursue himself, and then tossed the latter off his tail. Then, he returned and finally managed to save Sichu Lin. The pitiful Sichu Lin's expression was filled with gloom. He still had no idea why he had been beaten, and this caused a mouthful of resentment to be stuck in his heart, which he could not swallow no matter what he did. He should have fainted because of such heavy injuries in the first place, but because of this resentment, he was still wide awake, his eyes round. If he did not clarify things, he would really die with a grievance remaining in his heart. Hehe, Brother Han, it's been a long time. Zhao Ku greeted Ling Han. He saw that Ling Han did not look angry, and calmed his heart. Otherwise, he would not have let things go so easily. He would definitely have killed Sichu Lin. Pu. Sichu Lin finally spat out a mouthful of blood, so that was the truth of the matter. No wonder Zhao Ku almost beat him to death. So it seemed that the former had long since known Ling Han, and his action of attempting to drive a wedge between them must have angered Zhao Ku. Additionally, even a spoilt young master like Zhao Ku respectfully addressed Ling Han as brother, so what kind of background would Ling Han possess? It had to be eternal river tier, at the very least. Gasp. Sichu Lin wanted to throw up blood again. He could feel his heart clench, and felt an incredible feeling of foreboding. We have much affinity to meet together, Ling Han said, smiling. He was constantly thinking of that silver dragon armor that Zhao Ku was wearing. If he could snatch it and give it to the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, that would be great. Is Brother Han also here for the highest jade essence heart? Zhao Ku asked cautiously. If his old man had seen his current behavior, he would definitely not believe that this was his actual son. Ling Han nodded, and asked, "Are you also here for it?" No. How could that be? Zhao Ku hurriedly shook his head. What a joke. How could he possibly dare to compete with Ling Han? I am here to safeguard it for Brother Han. We'll just see who dares compete with Brother Han. Whoever dares to, I will deal with him. Not bad, you have good judgment, Ling Han said, smiling. Zhao Ku's eyes instantly lit up. Though he was now playing the lackey, if he managed to maintain a good relation with Ling Han, wouldn't he then gain the support of a Genesis tier? Then wouldn't he be able to do as he liked in the whole great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire? He could kill whoever he liked, and could sleep with whoever he liked. Just the mere thought of it caused him to be quite excited. Brother Han, please. Zhao Ku respectfully led Ling Han into the auction house. Sichu Genuan watched the two men disappear before he then turned to Sichu Lin, and demanded, "What's going on?" Sichu Lin only felt incredibly wronged. How would he know what was going on? It was really such a coincidence. He had paid such a heavy price to invite Zhao Ku over, and had wanted to make use of the latter's power to deal with his enemy, yet the end result was that he had slapped himself in the face. Trash, go back to the clan and reflect well on your errors. Sichu Genuan humphed. If they had offended Zhao Ku with this matter, and the Zhao clan would thus bear a grudge against them, it was possible that the three great clans of Gathering Wind City would become the two great clans in future. How could Sichu Lin dare to speak another word? He could only leave pathetically, and the moment he left, all the mauled flesh on his entire body fell down, blood forming a massive pool on the ground. He was really too miserable. In the auction house, Zhao Ku brought Ling Han into a private room like a lackey. It had actually been reserved by Sichu Lin, yet was now appropriated by Zhao Ku to gain Ling Han's favor. If Sichu Lin knew this, he would definitely spit out a few more mouthfuls of blood. It might even be possible that he would die out of pure fury. In the private room, Zhao Ku maintained a fixed gaze. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was just right beside him, but he did not give her a second look. He was practically more upright than any gentleman. A muscle twitched in Ling Han's cheek. This was really too much of an act. Not long after, the auction began. Ling Han did not have any interest in the other goods. He had come purposely for the highest jade essence heart. Thus, he had kept his eyes closed in rest all this while. Zhao Ku was chattering non-stop by his side, trying his best to gain Ling Han's favor. Everyone, the item that will be auctioned next is the highest jade essence heart, the auctioneer called out loudly, igniting everyone's passion in a single instant. The base price is 50 million true origin stones, and every subsequent bid cannot be lower than 10 million. 50 million. Zhao Ku immediately shouted loudly. My father is Zhao Zuyi, who dares compete with me? This spoilt young master was incredibly arrogant. To flatter Ling Han and gain his favor, he was really trying his best. Chapter 1359 goes to the highest bidder. Chapter 1359 goes to the highest bidder. What was an auction? That naturally was a universal competition, with the treasure going to the highest bidder. Zhao Ku, on the other hand, was using his old man's name to defeat his competitors right from the start. This caused a great many people to involuntarily look angry, wanting nothing more than to drag him out and pummel him. How could he be so overbearing? Yet Ling Han smiled. With such a profligate young master charging and breaking through the enemy lines, he could expend the least amount of money to obtain the highest jade essence heart. In a private room, a person coldly uttered, "Humph," An auction is a competition about who has the most money, not a competition of fathers. 60 million. He increased his bid. How dare you? Who do you think you are? Do you dare tell me your name? Zhao Ku shouted in anger. He had already announced his old man's name, yet the other actually dared not give him any face. This was a serious challenge to him. To be honest, young Master Zhao really had no one that he was afraid of in the whole Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. Even if the actual grandson of the Crimson Flame Emperor came, he would still dare slam a hand on the table in front of him. Jiyu clan, Jiyu Xiaoyun. A proud voice rang out from the private room, his arrogant attitude not the slightest bit inferior to Zhao Ku's. Jiyu. Could it be that it is that Jiyu clan? The great General Jiyu who had once been equal with Xie Qian and called the double tigers of the majestic empire with him? Definitely. If that was not the case, how would he have the confidence to compete with the Zhao clan? Everyone gave an "oh," their expressions very excited. If they were destined to be unable to obtain the highest Jade Essence Heart, they naturally hoped that the bidding price for this object could be as high as possible, as only then would they feel better about it. 70 million. Zhao Ku exclaimed very angrily. The other also had a Eternal River tier-level background, so he at least needed not be afraid of him, which made Zhao Ku very displeased. It looked like he could not use his old man to overwhelm the other party, so it could only be a competition of wealth. Brother Han, don't worry. I brought 200 million true origin stones with me this time. I will definitely get hold of the highest Jade Essence Heart for Brother Han, he declared confidently. Ling Han smiled slightly. He did not like taking advantage of others, but this kind of spoilt young master was an exception. In the past, he dared have designs on the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. If it had not been for the fact that he had still been wearing the Silver Dragon armor, his soul would have long since gone to the underworld. Since this profligate young master wanted to suck up to him, Ling Han would naturally not stop him. However, if he found out that the notionless saint was merely an empty shell in future, would he spit blood in his fury? That would definitely happen, now that he thought about it. He had acted the lackey and lost his god tools. This was practically a great humiliation. However, when that day really came, Ling Han might already advance into the Eternal River tier, directly tear off this guy's Silver Dragon armor, and send him on his way to the afterlife. 80 million. Jiyu Xiaoyun stated calmly as if he was sitting on a mountain of gold, appearing to be completely unhurried. 90 million. Zhao Ku was determined to compete with him, and increased his bid without the slightest hesitation. 100 million. 110 million. With these two young masters of noble clans competing, the bidding price of the highest Jade Essence Heart soared. Others did not even have the chance to place a challenging bid when the price had instantly surpassed their expected baseline. But when the bid came to about 150 million, even Zhao Ku was starting to break out in a cold sweat. He had brought 200 million true origin stones, and was already very close to his limit. However, the other party was still calm and unhurried, as if the wealth he had in his possession was far from this sum. This caused him to feel very embarrassed. This was happening right in front of young Master Han. He did not manage to successfully accomplish the first task, so how could he bear with such humiliation? 200 million. He directly called out his maximum limit, attempting to overwhelm the competitor with his imposing manner. Hiss, it's now 200 million. Though the highest Jade Essence Heart has no lack of buyers, with no one willing to sell, and would incite a massive competition the moment it appeared, 200 million is too much. About 100 million should be its limit. It can't be helped. With two young masters competing, I wouldn't be surprised even if the bid came to 300 million. The spectators downstage all discussed. The majority of them had come for the highest Jade Essence Heart, but they did not even have the chance to place a bid. With how fiercely the bid had been increased, even Jiyu Xiaoyun had been intimidated, and actually did not continue with another bid. 200 million once. 200 million twice. 210 million. Just when Zhao Ku thought he was sure to win, he heard Jiyu Xiaoyun's voice. He had once again increased the bid. Fuck. Zhao Ku immediately cursed, but when he saw how the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was frowning, he hurriedly smiled apologetically and said, "Sorry, sister-in-law. I have a dirty mouth, I'll deal out my own punishment. He gave himself a few loud slaps. Of course, it was merely soft touches in an attempt to show his attitude. Now that it had reached such a high price, it had actually far surpassed the value that the highest jade essence heart should have, and only these two young masters would compete so vigorously over it. Thus, the others were merely watching the excitement, and no one was interested. Young Master Han, I'm sorry. I don't have enough money, Zhao Ku said, his face flushed. This was really a great humiliation. To think a noble young master like him would actually experience a time when he was short of money, but there was nothing to be done for it. Aside from the silver dragon armor, all his other property had been extorted by Ling Han. How could it be that he did not need to use money to buy some back? And in that manner, no matter how much money he had, it was not enough for his expenditures. It was actually already quite difficult for him to save the 200 million he had now. Ling Han was indifferent, and spoke up, 250 million. Everyone was surprised. There actually appeared a third competitor. Furthermore, this person was obviously in the same private room as Zhao Ku, so which clan did this young master come from? Right, wasn't it the Sichu clan that was entertaining Zhao Ku this time round? Those who were well informed immediately thought of this, and secretly whispered among themselves. Soon, everyone knew that the person who had placed a consecutive bid now was Sichu Lin. This Sichu Lin really is quite courageous. He actually dares compete with the young master of the Jiyu clan. More importantly, this bid is already extremely high at present. If it's still young master Jiyu who wins in the end, Jiyu Shaoyun will definitely think that Sichu Lin had deliberately raised the bid, and it will be inevitable that the former will bear a grudge. But if Sichu Lin won the bidding, Jiyu Shaoyun would definitely be embarrassed. Whatever the result is, the Sichu clan would still undoubtedly offend the Jiyu clan. That is far from good. If Sichu Lin was present, he would definitely be throwing up blood. Fuck, what did this have to do with him? He was really too innocent. 260 million. Young Master Jiyu hesitated for a moment before raising the bid once more. The present bid had already exceeded his expectations, but as the young master of the Jiyu clan, how could he possibly admit defeat? What he was competing over now was no longer the highest jade essence heart, but rather his own pride. 300 million. Ling Han was extremely calm. Not only did he have hold of an astronomical sum of 1 billion true origin stones, he also possessed a great many alchemical pills and god tools which he could delegate to be auctioned off. The majority of them were Zhao Ku's property. No matter what, they had to be worth at least 200 to 300 million. Hence, he acted rich and overbearing, completely nonchalant. 310 million. Jiyu Shaoyun rubbed off his cold sweat. He already had a feeling that he was about to lose. True enough, Ling Han's voice immediately wafted over. 350 million. This time, Jiyu Shaoyun hesitated for a long while, and ultimately did not speak any further. 350 million once. 350 million twice. 350 million thrice. Deal. The auctioneer immediately knocked on the table, and decided the final owner of the highest jade essence heart. Chapter 1360 Leaving the City. Chapter 1360 Leaving the City. A sliver of satisfaction appeared on Ling Han's face. He had finally fulfilled his promise to Old Man Shu. He had gained many benefits from Old Man Shu. Whether it was the 7-kill subduing soul technique or the universal 8 desolation technique, both were extremely first-class techniques, and had been of great help to him. And he was the type of person to repay the smallest favor many times over. He had kept Old Man Shu's matter constantly on his mind, and now that he had completed the task, he felt a sense of relief. This time, he could return to the joint peace planet without any further worries. Young Master Han, you are really rich and imposing, I admit defeat. Zhao Ku exclaimed, giving him a thumbs up. Some of it was merely an act, but there was also some part that was sincere. After all, even he couldn't take out such a large amount of wealth, at least not recently. Ling Han merely smiled slightly. He and Zhao Ku were not comrades, and he did not have the slightest intention to befriend him. Next, there were a great many other items being auctioned off. There was godly metal, as well as god tools and alchemical pills. It was a diverse variety of items. Ling Han made his move, and purchased all the godly metal to be swallowed by his divine demon sword. As for god tools, he took no action. At the same price, he could buy 10 times the amount of godly metal. In any case, it would all be fed to the divine demon sword, so why would he have to deliberately purchase the more expensive ones? Yi, why does this god tool look a little familiar? Zhao Ku was watching in boredom, but when a long saber was brought out for auction, he scratched his head. He felt that that thing was extraordinarily familiar. Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden smiled secretly. How could it possibly be unfamiliar? It had in the first place been Zhao Ku's god tool, which was then snatched by Ling Han, who took it here to be auctioned off. The god tools were first traded for true origin stones, which were then used to buy godly metal. The amount would definitely be much more than the god tools themselves, even if part of it went to the auction house as service fee. Soon after, Zhao Ku continuously discovered that a great many of the god tools being on auction here gave him a very familiar feeling, and only when the final divine sword was being auctioned did he suddenly remember that these were all his. He couldn't help but look at Ling Han plaintively. As it turned out, all his property had been sold off by Ling Han. Though he was internally displeased, he did not dare show his feelings in the slightest. What a joke! Ling Han was the descendant of a Genesis tier, so even in a competition of backgrounds, he would lose. Of course, if his background was slightly stronger, he would definitely show his true colors and immediately turn hostile with Ling Han. That was the type of man he was. Zhao Ku also made his move, and bought a few god tools that were his in the first place. Those god tools that deserved to be in his collection were naturally out of the ordinary. However, because Jiyu Shaoyun had lost the competition for the highest Jade Essence Heart, he naturally bore a grudge against Zhao Ku as well. Thus, he deliberately increased the bidding price, causing Zhao Ku to experience terrible loss. He almost wanted to cry. They were obviously his god tools, yet he still had to buy them back at such a high price. At the same time, he was also gritting his teeth with resentment toward Jiyu Shaoyun, and swore that he would definitely make the latter suffer. He actually dared to defy him. The auction continued for a very long time, and only ended 5 days later. Ling Han, meanwhile, had gained much from this auction. Not only had he obtained the highest Jade Essence Heart, he had also bought a great amount of level 9 godly metal. He went off to settle his bill, yet had only paid 70 million true origin stones. That was because he had earned more than 400 million from the alchemical pills and god tools he had auctioned off. If it was not for the fact that he had also bought a great amount of godly metal, he could actually earn quite a large number of true origin stones even. Sichu Lin. When Ling Han came out, he saw a young man was standing in front of him. The latter had a slender, tall build, with very thin eyes. He stared fixedly at Ling Han. "I'll remember you." He was Jiyu Shaoyun. After he said this, he turned around and left. He actually did not give Ling Han the slightest chance to speak. Ling Han's expression involuntarily became strange. The grudge and resentment had actually been borne by Sichu Lin. Should he chase after him and give him a proper explanation? Forget it, he was too lazy. Ha 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 ha. Zhao Ku, meanwhile, laughed raucously. When he thought of the expression that Jiyu Shaoyun would have on his face when he discovered he had made such an unexpected mistake in future, he couldn't help but laugh so much that his stomach was aching. Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden left. He naturally would not care if Jiyu Shaoyun and Sichu Lin would come to blows in future. When they returned to the inn, they made some preparations and planned to take their leave in order to head to Big Trade City. After this, they would then leave the Cloud Apex planet and head back to the Joint Peace planet. When 100 years passed, Ling Han would return here and head to the Star Sand Martial Arts Academy in the Myriad Directions Galaxy to meet the true prodigies of the immortal realm. "I can't leave with you." Li Ruotong bit her lip. "The clan has already sent people out to stand guard at the city gates. If I leave the city, they would definitely capture and take me back by force." Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly, and said, "That's all right. If I want to take someone away, who could stop me?" Li Ruotong naturally would not believe him. Though Ling Han was very strong, He was only in the early stage of the low extreme, after all. Even if he was a 10-star genius, that would only be capable of matching the late stage of the high extreme, but the Li clan had an ancestor in the consummate level, who was furthermore a 4-star genius. There was no doubt that this would be a one-sided battle. But this was the master of her beloved, so even if there was much disbelief in her heart, she did not dare voice her doubt. However, she soon discovered that the others were all smiling as if they had full confidence in Ling Han. What's going on? She knew that Ling Han was very freakish, but weren't they all a little too blindly admiring of this man? Ling Han smiled, and said, "It's also time to bring Joyao and Ruotong into the Black Tower." With a wave of his hand, he had brought all of them into the Black Tower. Instantly, those who had not entered the Black Tower before were all extremely surprised. This was a spatial god tool. Ling Han brought them all to the roots of the reincarnation tree, and said, "You all first comprehend Dao here, and when we return to Big Trade City, I will let you all know you can come back out." "All right." Feng Po Yun nodded. "After the battle with the Earth Dragon sect, I have accumulated a great amount of insight about martial arts, and I precisely need to carefully comprehend what I have obtained." En. Murong Qing nodded. Li Ruotong was already stunned speechless, but Juyao's adaptability was incredibly frightening. He had already sat down in a cross-legged position under the reincarnation tree, and begun to comprehend Dao. Meanwhile, the Notionless Saint and the Azura Demon Emperor had long since been sitting here. They were presently cultivating tirelessly in seclusion, and had not been disturbed by their arrival. Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden left the Black Tower. Now, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had met with the bottleneck before the Heavenly Body tier. It was not something that could be overcome with mere comprehension. Perhaps a slight pause would cause a flash of inspiration. Thus, she still decided to walk outside and have a taste of life to accumulate her appreciation. The couple walked side by side, and headed out of the city. It was obvious that they were known to the 3 great clans by now. When they arrived at the city gates, they encountered a very strict interrogation that was because immortals could shrink their size, and it was very common for them to hide in the sleeves of others and take advantage of the opportunity to be brought out of the city. But Ling Han was in the Heavenly Body tier. Who dared to come near him and do a body search? In the eyes of others, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was also in the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and similarly could not be easily offended. Thus, even if there were Heavenly Body tier elites on guard here, they merely swept over them a few times with their divine sense, confirming that there was no additional life signs coming from Ling Han and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden before letting them go. Ling Han neared the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and whispered into her ear, "Just guess. Would we be hunted down later?" "That is definite," the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden replied. There was still a great number of true origin stones on Ling Han, as well as the highest jade essence heart. Previously, when they were in the city, everyone would still have a bit of wariness, but the moment they exited the city, it was definite that all the bad characters would be popping out of the woodwork. If we can't talk reason, we can only resort to bloodshed. A flicker of killing intent flashed through Ling Han's eyes. Chapter 1361 Spirit Awakening Technique. Chapter 1361 Spirit Awakening Technique. They had not exited the city for more than 30 minutes when they saw a figure sweep across the skies and stand in their way. It was a blue-skinned person. Needless to say, this was definitely a member of the Sichu clan, and Ling Han had met this person before too. It was Sichu Genuan. "Sir, you are a Heavenly Body tier elite, yet impersonated a junior of our clan. Do you not think that is going too far?" Sichu Genuan asked calmly, though there were divine patterns glowing on his hands. He was presently preparing to release a powerful move. Ling Han was extremely calm, and said, "Did I ever mention that I was a member of the Sichu clan? If others misunderstood, that would be their business. It is not my duty to correct the mistakes of others. Humph, no matter how smooth your words are, I will still apprehend you today." Sichu Genuan suddenly leaped up, and charged towards Ling Han. He had to finish the battle as soon as possible. He was not the only Heavenly Body tier in Gathering Wind City, and there were a great many people who coveted the wealth in Ling Han's possession. If he did not quickly kill Ling Han off, It would be trouble when more of them came. Die. Like an arrow, he had shot within 9 meters of Ling Han. In this distance, he could maximize the power of his attack. He shot out a palm strike, and divine patterns glowed, forming a seal of light that was 9 meters wide, which blasted towards Ling Han. Meanwhile, 3 heavenly bodies appeared behind him, showing that his cultivation level was in the high extreme. Boom! 3 heavenly bodies boosted the power of the seal of light, forming a destructive impact. Peng! 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 The light seal swept over, and the ground was terribly ravaged. Many cracks appeared on the ground, their depth indiscernible. In that short instant, the light seal had reached Ling Han. Ling Han moved, and pressed his hand in front of him. Creak! An ear-piercing racket rang out. Ling Han was endlessly pushing the light seal back. It crushed everything in its path, a deep gulf forming in the ground. Only once it had arrived 100 miles away did it finally stop, and the light seal flickered before finally disappearing. Sichu Genuan couldn't help but gape, his expression stunned. Fuck, what kind of power and physique was that? The other was only in the low extreme of the heavenly body tier, whereas he was in the middle stage of the high extreme. The difference between them was a total of 9 sub-minor levels. This should have been a crushing victory. Yet, the other party actually had not been suppressed by his power, but rather blasted his attack back and dispelled his power easily. This physique was a little too powerful, wasn't it? Otherwise, how could he have possibly withstood such impact? He would have long since been turned into dust. Freak. Ling Han withdrew his hand, and couldn't help but frown. He said, "The difference of cultivation level is a little big, I have indeed strained myself too much." There was a gap of 9 stars between their cultivation levels, and even if Sichu Genuan was only a 1-star genius, there was still a power gap of 4 stars between them. This was a gap of 10,000 times. Thankfully, power was only a portion of battle prowess. Strained yourself. Die. Since Sichu Genuan had made his move, he naturally had no plans to allow Ling Han to leave alive. With a battle cry, 3 heavenly bodies began to orbit around him, forming into multiple great stars, which he then stimulated to press down on Ling Han. Boom! The great stars rained down as if they planned to destroy the world. Ling Han was undisturbed. With a wave of his hand, he sent the heavenly phoenix divine maiden into the distance, and then pointed a finger at Sichu Genuan. He smilingly said, "Old geezer, don't be too arrogant." He released his heaven's might. Boom! Under the rolling out of his aura, the area within 10 miles of him was completely enshrouded. What? Sichu Genuan couldn't help but pale. He suddenly discovered that his power had actually dropped dramatically by 2 stars. That was 2 stars of power, which was equivalent to him being weakened by 2 sub-minor levels. In that short instant, the power gap between himself and Ling Han had shrunk down by 2 stars. Though it was still an overwhelming advantage, taking into account Ling Han's frightening physique, it was already within the range that Ling Han could bear. Though this cannot be considered a battle between equals, I am invincible among my peers, so that would be boring anyway. With a loud battle cry, Ling Han shot out and started to attack Sichu Genuan. Using his finger like a sword, he used the lightning sword technique, his movement as quick as lightning. There was indeed a difference in power between them, but the lightning sword technique could draw on the might of heavenly tribulation, and merging it with the power of regulation that Ling Han had grasped, its power was extraordinarily mighty. At least, it could compensate for 1 star of difference in battle prowess. At first, there was a difference of 2 minor levels between them, but with the repeated movements from Ling Han, he had forcibly shrunk down their power gap to a difference of only 1 star of battle prowess. This would really be worth fighting, then. Sichu Genuan was absolutely astonished. He had initially thought that this attack would be a sure victory. Even if Ling Han managed to flee, he would at least have to burn his life force, which would affect the advancement of his cultivation level in future. Then, he would no longer be a threat. Yet, Ling Han actually dared fight him head-on. Furthermore, he was only a slight bit weaker, and this was something he could not accept. Spirit awakening technique. Finally, Sichu Genuan did not dare to underestimate Ling Han any further, and used the true secret technique of the Sichu clan. Using his index and middle fingers together, He drew out multiple strange seals. The bizarre thing was that these seals flickered with light in mid-air as if they had been drawn on paper. Under the imperial orders of the heavens, the spirit of the skies, and the spirit of the ground, appear. Boom! Following a loud shout from him, the spiritual chi in the air suddenly gathered, forming a gigantic human figure. It was covered all over with divine patterns. The ground split apart, and a massive creature that was formed from earth chi similarly climbed out. Very powerful. Ling Han immediately thought. These two that had been formed from spiritual chi, he would call them spiritual bodies then, were very powerful. Furthermore, they were not true living beings, so they naturally would not fear being wounded or killed. Die. Sichu Genuan pointed a finger, and the two spiritual bodies immediately brandished their fists at Ling Han. Those massive fists were like mountains that descended from the skies. Ling Han waved a hand, and finally used Tide of the Ages. This was a celestial technique. When Ding Yarolong had used this secret technique, even those that were 2 minor levels superior to him were no match, and now that it was used by Ling Han, it also achieved the same effect. Attack, and aging. Ling Han took the chance to counterattack. Peng, 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 in a mere few punches, he had crushed these two spiritual bodies into dust. Sichu Jinyuan's mouth had become completely rounded. He completely could not believe that this secret technique of the clan would so easily collapse at the first blow in front of Ling Han. Shio, shio, shio. One after another, figures descended from the skies. They were all heavenly body tier elites of Gathering Wind City. Though they had appeared slightly late, it was obvious that they had not missed the show. Furthermore, they just so happened to witness Ling Han show his massive might, destroying the two spiritual bodies. This caused their hair to stand on ends. This young man was too ferocious, wasn't he? There were a great many people who directly turned and left without saying another word. As long as Ling Han did not die, his future prospects would be boundless, so it was best not to become enemies with this kind of person. However, there were also some people who couldn't suppress their greed and still surrounded Ling Han, their gaze sinister. Hand over the highest jade essence heart and all your true origin stones, and we can spare your life, someone shouted. Ling Han's eyes swept over them. He involuntarily smiled, and said, "There are 8 of you, so whom should I hand over the goods to?" "You need not worry about that, just hand them over," another person declared. It was obvious that these people were all wily foxes. How could they possibly fall for Ling Han's attempt to sow dissension between them? Ling Han's right hand moved, and the divine demon sword was finally summoned. "If I refuse, then die." Chapter 1362, Slaying 8 Heavenly Body Tier Elites. Chapter 1362, Slaying 8 Heavenly Body Tier Elites. Sichu Genuan and the 7 other Heavenly Body Tier Elites immediately attacked Ling Han in unison. He was the only outsider here, and once they killed him, they would finally be able to discuss how they would distribute the highest jade essence heart as well as the large number of true origin stones. However, if they couldn't kill Ling Han, all of these things would merely be intangible dreams. Among the 8 heavenly body tier elites, Sichu Genuan was the most powerful. There were 2 others who had also reached the high extreme, yet they were only at the early stage of the high extreme. Of the remaining 5 elites, 3 were at the medium extreme, and 2 were at the low extreme. They all unleashed their own secret techniques, attempting to suppress Ling Han as quickly as possible. Boom! Heavenly bodies materialized in the air, some radiating with an eerie black light, and some radiating with a glow as blinding as the light from the sun. Devastating power ruthlessly swept through the surroundings. Ling Han raised his divine demon sword with a laugh, and said, "Old friend, we're going to go on a killing spree." The divine demon sword replied with a light ring. The blade of the sword quivered by itself, and it was as if the cries of dragons and roars of tigers could be heard. After being nurtured for so long, this divine sword was slowly developing a spirit. Wang. Ling Han unleashed heaven's might and suppressed the cultivation of the 8 heavenly body tier elites by 2 stars. What's going on? Why did my power suddenly fall so drastically? What secret technique is this? Apart from Sichu Genuan, the 7 other heavenly body tier elites all exclaimed in astonishment. They were unable to grow accustomed to this sudden drop in power. It was as if a terrifying apocalypse were descending. Die. Ling Han brandished his sword, unleashing bursts of sword light that soared through the skies. Pu. 2 heads immediately flew into the sky. Blood gushed from their severed necks, painting the surrounding space a sanguinary red. The victims were the 2 elites at the low extreme of the heavenly body tier. In the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire and perhaps even throughout the entire Immortal Realm, they were powerful enough to be regarded as elites. However, they had been unable to block even a single strike from Ling Han. They were killed in a flash, and both their bodies and divine senses had been obliterated. Peng. However, in order to achieve these 2 kills, Ling Han had also exposed himself to the attacks of the 6 other powerful elites. Even so, he merely vomited a few mouthfuls of blood. Although his body had been penetrated by the attacks, none of them had hit his godly bones. Thus, it could be said that he had only received some minor flesh wounds. Fuck. What kind of defense is this? Someone exclaimed in astonishment. This was far too incredible. Ling Han had focused most of his power on killing those 2 heavenly body tier elites, so logically speaking, his defenses should have been extremely weak. How could he have faced the attacks of the 6 other heavenly body tier elites and only ended up with some minor flesh wounds? He's a fucking freak. Ling Han flashed a wide smile. He then activated the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, healing the wounds on his body at a rate that was visible to the naked eye. In a few blinks of the eye, he had already recovered to his peak condition. Holy motherfucker. This time, even Sichu Genuan was stunned. He knew that Ling Han's physique was powerful, but he didn't know that his recovery ability was also this insanely freakish. How can we kill such a freak? What they still didn't know was, as long as Ling Han circulated a drop indestructible true fluid, he would be able to heal all of his wounds, regardless of how severe they were. They more so didn't know that Ling Han could even rise from the ashes, being reborn from death. Not only could he heal all of his wounds, but he could even regain all of his energy and reach the peak of his condition. However, with their strength, they probably couldn't push Ling Han far enough to use these techniques. Die! Ling Han shouted with a low growl. There was a cold glint in his eyes, and at this moment, killing intent burst from his body. If he didn't kill all of these people, his sword would never return to its sheath. We need to work together. Sichu Genuan shouted in panic. Right now, there was no time for him to worry about the fact that his opponent was only at the low extreme of the heavenly body tier. If they allowed Ling Han to continue killing them in exchange for flesh wounds, it wouldn't be long before they were all killed. As for Ling Han, his body was essentially undying, so it wouldn't bother him no matter how many wounds he received. The 6 elites started to cover for each other, and this was indeed an effective strategy. Ling Han still wasn't powerful enough to suppress all 6 of them at once. Thus, even though Sichu Genuan and the others couldn't wound Ling Han couldn't wound or kill them, either. Sir, we acknowledge your strength, Sichu Genuan said. How about this? We'll only take half of your treasures. Millimeter, we'll only take half, the others said as they nodded. This deadlock had to be broken in some way. Ling Han couldn't help but chuckle. Were you all dropped on your heads as children? These are clearly my possessions, so why do I have to give you people half? I think it's better if you people leave your lives here and donate all of your possessions to me. In your dreams, the 6 people chided. Although they couldn't breach Ling Han's defenses, they were more than capable of teaming up and protecting themselves. Is that so? Ling Han immediately charged over. Scram, the 6 elites shouted as they attacked Ling Han in unison. Tide of the Ages, Ling Han whispered softly. He waved his left hand, and the tide of time instantly aged the attacks of the 6 elites. To their shock and surprise, they were completely unable to stop Ling Han's advance. Ling Han activated the lightning sword technique as he slashed down with his divine demon sword, unleashing boundless rays of divine light. This was a future celestial tool. Pu. As Ling Han dashed past them, another heavenly body tier elite collapsed to the ground. Half of his head had been sliced off by the divine demon sword, and it was without a doubt that his divine sense had been obliterated. This person's eyes were wide and bulging, and it was as if he were filled with a sense of shock and incredulity. How could he have died? Only 5 left, Ling Han said calmly. However, it was this calm tone and demeanor of his that sent ice-cold chills through the bodies of the 5 elites, who had just escaped from the raging flurry of sword strikes. Ling Han brandished his divine demon sword as he charged forward again. The 5 heavenly body tier elites tried to work together, yet their cooperation was meaningless before the power of time. The tide of the ages instantly aged their attacks, rendering their resistance futile. Moreover, when it came to their defenses, what defense could the divine demon sword not breach? At least there was no one in the heavenly body tier whose defense could withstand a direct strike from the divine demon sword. Pu, pu, pu. Head after head flew into the air, causing fountains of blood to gush into the surroundings. Elite after elite collapsed, and in the end, only Sichu Genuan and the 2 other elites at the high extreme remained standing. This wasn't because their defenses were powerful enough to withstand the strikes from the divine demon sword, but because they had already stopped working together, each running their own way when the divine demon sword swept over. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh heartily. After spending so much time and effort to raise his divine demon sword to level 9, it sure as hell wasn't disappointing him. Its might was becoming more and more terrifying by the day. This was the might of a weapon that was destined to become a celestial tool in the future. Sichu Genuan suddenly pointed at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and shouted, "Capture her. That's right, capture that woman so we can threaten this brat." The eyes of the 2 other elites lit up, and they immediately charged toward the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. "You're seeking death." The killing intent from Ling Han's body exploded, and he immediately tossed the notionless saint out again. "Wretched brat, have you had enough yet?" After being dragged away from the reincarnation tree, the notionless saint naturally stopped his cultivation. Moreover, under his furious rage, he didn't hold back as he released his overwhelming and formidable aura. Gasp! Sichu Genuan and the 2 other elites were all petrified. This was the aura of a saint. Ling Han seized this opportunity to activate the star-plucking step and charge toward them. After comprehending the might of heavenly tribulation, his speed had now become even more terrifyingly quick. He reached them in an instant, and he ruthlessly slashed down with his divine demon sword. Pu, pu, pu. 3 heads were instantly tossed into the sky. After being stunned by the aura of a saint, Sichu Genuan and the 2 others were unable to offer even an ounce of resistance. Brat the notionless saint still wanted to say something, yet he was immediately tossed back into the Black Tower by Ling Han. Ling Han's actions were incredibly smooth, and it was as if he had already become accustomed to this action. Chapter 1363 The Might of the Treasure Forest Pavilion. Chapter 1363 The Might of the Treasure Forest Pavilion. Ling Han immediately left after collecting the spatial spirit tools of the 8 heavenly body tier elites. He didn't stay back to examine his loot closely. He had no time to deal with the raging commotion that would sweep through Gathering Wind City as a result of the deaths of so many heavenly body tier elites. His principles were extremely simple. If someone wanted to kill him, then he would kill them first. Nothing more needed to be said. Several days passed, and Ling Han arrived at Big Trade City. There was a huge amount of wealth in the 8 elite spatial spirit tools. In total, there were around 200 to 300 million true origin stones. Ling Han was delighted upon discovering this. Sure enough, looting others was the best way to obtain wealth. The others all came out from the Black Tower. After this stop, they would return to the joint peace planet. Thus, they all needed to make some preparations. Those who needed to pack things would pack things, and those who needed to bring people with them would prepare said people for the journey back. The higher Ling Han's cultivation level reached, the less afraid he was of other people discovering that he possessed a spatial god tool. Of course, the true secret of the Black Tower definitely couldn't be revealed. Otherwise, even the celestial realm would be astonished. Ling Han made his way to the Treasure Forest Pavilion. He had promised to help Han Xinyan master the refinement techniques of the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill. Now that 10 years had passed, how was that woman progressing? Although 10 years seemed long, how could the refinement techniques of level 8 divine pills be so easy to grasp? At that time, Ling Han had spent several months to master the refinement techniques of this divine pill, but he'd been completing comprehension under the reincarnation tree. If this were converted into real time, it would have been at least dozens of years, if not over a century. Ling Han was the alchemy emperor, yet even he needed to spend such a lengthy period of time, so one could imagine just how long it would take for others to master the refinement techniques of this pill. He had been in a hurry the last time he came here, and he had left with Ding Ping, Chen Ruijing, and the others shortly after finding them. He hadn't gone to the Treasure Forest Pavilion. Thus, this was his reason for coming here again after 10 years. To immortals, a period of 10 years wasn't long at all. Most people possessed long lifespans, and 10 years was perhaps not even long enough to grey a single hair of a cultivator. Thus, Ling Han was immediately recognized by someone upon arriving at the Treasure Forest Pavilion. Grandmaster Ling. More and more people started to exclaim his name. At that time, Ling Han had defeated all of the alchemists of the Treasure Forest Pavilion by himself, winning the respect of everyone. Ling Han smiled as he nodded in acknowledgement. After his arrival was reported to the higher-ups, he was led to a small garden where he met Lin Yuqi. This woman was bewitching as always, and her eyebrows and eyes were all exuding a sense of indescribable seductiveness. She swept her gaze over Ling Han, and a look of astonishment instantly washed over her face. You were only at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier 10 years ago, millimeter Chem. Ling Han nodded, an indifferent expression on his face. Yet, you're already at the heavenly body tier now, Lin Yuqi exclaimed. She felt a little exasperated. Can't you act a little more shocked? Isn't it boring if I'm the only one yelping in astonishment? I know, Ling Han replied with a nod. He was naturally aware of his own cultivation level. Moreover, after reaching the heavenly body tier, he could also detect Lin Yuqi's cultivation level. She was also at the low extreme of the heavenly body tier. Lin Yuqi was rendered speechless. After a short pause, she composed herself and wiped the look of curiosity and shock from her face. Her expression became charming and seductive again, and she purposefully shuffled closer to Ling Han. A sweet fragrance wafted toward Ling Han. This fragrance was clearly very concentrated, yet it didn't smell overpowering or pungent at all. Handsome little brother, why don't you tell this sister how you reached the heavenly body tier so quickly? Ling Han took a step back, and replied, Madam, shouldn't you know already? It was the Berserk blood spirit pills, of course. Pay. You think this sister hasn't taken them before? Lin Yuqi said with a humph. Every time a Berserk blood spirit pill is ingested, there'll be a cooldown period of 3 years. If one ingests too many in quick succession, the Berserk blood spirit pill will eventually become a deadly poison. So, why don't you tell me, how did you ingest so many Berserk blood spirit pills in just 10 years? Others might have been helpless about such a problem, but this didn't mean that Ling Han was also helpless. The Black Tower was a precious treasure from the celestial realm, and who knew had more so reached the Genesis tier in just 5 years. Compared to her, his cultivation speed was as slow as a snail. Ling Han simply replied with a faint smile. This was related to his biggest secret, so he naturally couldn't tell any outsiders. Oh, so you're treating sister as an outsider? You're still unwilling to tell me? Lin Yuqi was secretly simmering with anger. 10 years had passed, yet this person hadn't changed a single bit. He was still completely immune to her charm and seduction. Then, sister will submit to you. How about I become your woman? Her voice was laced with seductiveness, and her eyes were shimmering with charm. Her allure was boundless. Sure. Ling Han replied with a smile. Who was afraid of whom? He leaned forward as if he were going to embrace her with a chuckle, and said, Come, I'll take you as my 19th mistress. Pay. Lin Yuqi hurriedly turned around and stepped back gracefully. Handsome little brother, who would have thought that you were this kind of person? You even dare to tease this sister. Everything about her was charming and seductive, yet it was only ever her who was teasing and toying around with others' emotions. She naturally couldn't allow Ling Han to take advantage of her. Ling Han ignored her, and asked, Has Han Xinyan mastered the refinement of the Berserk blood spirit pill yet? No, Lin Yuqi replied with a shake of her head. There was a look of regret on her face. However, her eyes suddenly lit up, and she said, "Handsome little brother, do you want to receive a great opportunity?" "What great opportunity?" "I'm all ears," Ling Han said. "Since you're an alchemist, you'll definitely be interested in this," Lin Yuqi said confidently. She paused for a moment before continuing. The Treasure Forest Pavilion is made up of 4 major clans. They're the Lin, Shu, Han, and Huang clan, respectively. Not only is there conflict and competition between the 4 clans, but there's even conflict and competition within each of the 4 clans themselves. The Treasure Forest Pavilion has refined alchemical pills for generation upon generation, and the reason that it has become the most powerful alchemy force in the Long Light Galaxy is because... She paused and looked at Ling Han before saying, "We have control over an ancient mystery realm from where we can obtain pill recipes and even godly medicines. However, this mystery realm only opens once every 100,000 years. Moreover, only a limited number of people is allowed to enter. Regarding how many quota positions the different branches of a clan can receive, this is determined by a series of intense competitions. However, there's also an age limit regarding who can enter the mystery realm. Not only does one have to be under 1 million years old, but their relative age also has to be under 30 years old. Thus, when fighting for the quota positions, only prodigies who satisfy these conditions are allowed to compete. Although Xinyan's surname is Han, she's been raised in our Anyuan branch Lin clan since a very young age. We have very high hopes for her, yet she still hasn't succeeded in mastering the refinement of the Berserk Blood Spirit pill yet. As such, it'll be extremely difficult for her to obtain a good result in the competitions. If you join the Anyuan branch of the Lin clan, I'll promise you a spot to enter the mystery realm as long as you can place in the top 10. Regarding what pill recipes or godly medicines you obtain, that will be up to your own abilities. What do you say?" Ling Han didn't reply immediately. In reality, he had the Black Tower, so he didn't need to worry about getting screwed over. However, agreeing to this proposal too quickly wasn't good, either. If he agreed immediately, he would either be stupid, or he would be blatantly admitting that he possessed a freakish life-saving trump card. "How long is there until the mystery realm opens?" he asked. "A little over a year." "Okay, deal," Ling Han said with a nod. A smile blossomed across Lin Yuqi's beautiful face, and she said, "You're a smart person. I knew that you would definitely agree. We'll leave for the headquarters of the Treasure Forest Pavilion in half a year's time. You can use this time to complete some preparations." "Sure," Ling Han said with a nod. "Regarding Xinyan, I suggest that you head over to check up on her as well. If she's improved, perhaps we can obtain even more positions. Also, meet me again tomorrow. Sister needs to train you properly. Relative age refers to one's age with respect to their total lifespan. I think you can think of it as 1 year equaling 1% of the lifespan, roughly." Chapter 1364 Understanding Godly Medicines. Chapter 1364 Understanding Godly Medicines. To Ling Han, cultivation was incredibly important. However, alchemy wasn't something that he could neglect, either. In his previous life, he had spent all of his time and effort on alchemy. He had relegated cultivation to a supporting role for his alchemy. In this life, however, he valued cultivation far more than alchemy. Cultivation was what would give him the strength and power to do as he pleased in this world. However, this didn't mean that he would give up on alchemy. It was quite the contrary, in fact, with alchemy still holding a very important position. This was because he had many friends and family, many of whom needed more and higher quality alchemical pills. Thus, he had agreed to Lin Yuqi's request without much hesitation. After returning to his temporary residence, everyone expressed their approval for his decision. In any case, the better Ling Han's alchemy skills, the more benefits they would receive. Only the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was a little unhappy. She had heard that the manager of the Treasure Forest Pavilion was extremely bewitching and coquettish. Of course, she still believed in Ling Han. If Ling Han were truly a playboy, he could have gathered himself heaven knew how many stunning beauties on his journey to the immortal realm. To say nothing of the immortal realm, Ling Han had already become the undisputed king while he was still in the lower realm. He was the most powerful person in that world, and there were definitely countless beauties who would have willingly thrown themselves at him. The next day, Ling Han went to meet Lin Yuqi after giving some guidance to Han Xinyan. Although Han Xinyan was talented in alchemy, it wasn't an easy task to master the refinement of level 8 divine pills. Moreover, the Berserk Blood Spirit pill was a saint pill among level 8 divine pills, making it even harder to grasp than other ordinary level 8 divine pills. It was impossible for her to comprehensively master this pill recipe within 100 years. Ling Han had initially thought that Lin Yuqi would hand him some new pill recipes to learn so that he could use them during the competition in half a year's time. However, his expectation couldn't have been further from the truth. The seductive woman retrieved a godly medicine, and asked, "Do you know what medicinal plant this is?" Ling Han couldn't help but chuckle. She was actually using this to test him? She was underestimating him far too much. He shook his head, and replied, "This is the Three Clouds grass." Lin Yuqi chuckled before suddenly snapping her fingers and unleashing countless blade-like auras. The godly medicine was instantly sliced into tens of thousands of pieces. She reached over and collected all of these pieces into her hand before placing them on the table, and saying, "Okay, now I want you to put this godly medicine back together." Ling Han was astonished. "She's even testing me like this. But what's the point? This is testing your recognition of godly medicines. Not only will you be tested on this during the clan competition, but you'll even be tested on this inside the mystery realm should you want to receive the rewards that it offers. Thus, you have to reach a certain level in this skill as well. Simply being good at refining pills alone isn't good enough," Lin Yuqi said calmly. Ling Han nodded in understanding. He casually waved his hand and separated the tens of thousands of pieces of the godly medicine, with not a single piece overlapping. He then recalled the original appearance of the Three Clouds grass in his mind. Afterward, he started to shift the pieces and reconstruct the godly medicine. "You made 37 mistakes," Lin Yuqi pointed out after he had completed reconstructing the godly medicine. Ling Han didn't believe this. However, Lin Yuqi immediately identified these 37 mistakes and reordered their positions. Sure enough, the final result looked far more natural than what it had been before. He had no choice but to concede that Lin Yuqi was indeed correct. There is a total of 810,000 godly medicines throughout the entire immortal realm. Moreover, through hybridization and nurturing, these godly medicines can undergo all kinds of transformations. Even so, these transformations won't diverge from their core. After all, they're simply a variation of the 810,000 types of godly medicines. Thus, you need to fully understand and grasp these 810,000 godly medicines. That way, you will have grasped the unique properties of all the godly medicines in the immortal realm, Lin Yuqi said calmly. At this moment, she wasn't a bewitching and seductive beauty anymore. Instead, she was more like a knowledgeable scholar. Ling Han nodded in agreement. If others were right, he would have to accept their comments. He couldn't hang on to his old and outdated views. In any case, her words had indeed opened his eyes to an entirely new world. So, as it turned out, being able to refine pills alone was far from sufficient. Here, these are the illustrated encyclopedias of godly medicines. Lin Yuqi tossed a small mountain of books at him, and said, "Even with the power and influence of the Treasure Forest Pavilion, we still can't collect information on all the godly medicines in the world. However, these are copies of the encyclopedias that we obtained from the mystery realm. They should be enough to teach you about all the godly medicines." "Thank you," Ling Han said earnestly. The knowledge from these encyclopedias would also be extremely valuable to him. "Of course you need to thank me and remember all that I've done for you." She hadn't been serious for long, and she had already turned back into a bewitching beauty again. She started to make eyes at Ling Han. Ling Han was speechless. He immediately gathered up the encyclopedias and left. After returning to his residence, Ling Han started to comprehend in seclusion. He sat under the reincarnation tree and furiously brushed up on his knowledge of godly medicines. There was a total of 810,000 godly medicines, so it was going to be a huge task to memorize the unique characteristics and shapes of all of them. Moreover, Lin Yuqi had extremely high standards, and she expected him to possess the ability to flawlessly piece any godly medicine back together after they were sliced into tens of thousands of pieces. This was incredibly time-consuming, as well as extremely taxing on the mind and body. Fortunately, he had the reincarnation tree. This was like a massive cheat code. Otherwise, he would only have half a year to memorize all of this knowledge before the clan competition began. With the help of the reincarnation tree, he had around 200 years' time. Fuck it. I'll do this. Ling Han entered the world of godly medicines. Under the reincarnation tree, he didn't have any other unrelated thoughts. Godly medicine after godly medicine sprang to life in his mind, their unique characteristics and shapes as clear as day. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Time slowly crept by. Ling Han had only grasped the qualities of 200,000 godly medicines, yet he was confident that his alchemy skills had elevated to another level. He possessed a comprehensive understanding of the intricacies of these godly medicines, and thus he would definitely be more comfortable and skilled when he had to fuse the medicinal properties of different godly medicines together. After reaching this stage, Ling Han had already developed a strong interest in the intricacies of all the different godly medicines. Thus, even if he didn't have to participate in the clan competition of the Treasure Forest Pavilion, and even if he didn't have a chance to enter the ancient mystery realm, he would still persist in mastering the knowledge of all the encyclopedias. They were far too valuable and helpful. This was only natural. After ascending to the immortal realm, he had slowly found his way around alchemy by himself. Even though he was the alchemy emperor, there was still a risk that he might go astray. Right now, comprehending these godly medicines was essentially the same as correcting his own path. Half a year passed, and Ling Han had only just grasped the qualities of 400,000 or so godly medicines. In other words, he had only grasped the qualities of around half of all the godly medicines. He couldn't help but sigh in emotion. If only he had another 6 months of time. However, half a year had already passed, so Ling Han placed everyone else into the Black Tower. They could cultivate under the reincarnation tree there, and they would also have the guidance of a saint. Thus, that was naturally the best place to cultivate in the entire immortal realm. Ling Han arrived at the Treasure Forest Pavilion, only to see that Lin Yuqi was already finished with her preparations. Meanwhile, Han Xinyan looked a little dejected. She still hadn't mastered the refinement of the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill, and thus she lacked belief and confidence for this competition. Let's go. Their transportation tool was still Lin Yuqi's extremely luxurious carriage. One wouldn't feel any turbulence when sitting inside this carriage, and it would feel as if they were traveling over flat land. Apparently, the journey to the headquarters of the Treasure Forest Pavilion would take 10 or so days. Ling Han couldn't help but feel that this was a shame. If he could spend this time inside the Black Tower, he could definitely memorize the qualities of several thousand more godly medicines. Brother Han, how many godly medicines have you grasped now? Coincidentally, Lin Yuqi was also thinking about this matter. However, the way with which she referred to Ling Han would change every single day. Ling Han sighed, and said, only 400,000. Pu. Lin Yuqi and Han Xinyan both broke into a fit of coughing. Their faces were filled with a look of utter disbelief. Chapter 1365 Supreme Natural Talon. Chapter 1365 Supreme Natural Talon. Ling Han sighed, and said, I know, this is far from enough. Oi, are you joking around? Lin Yuqi was completely stunned, so much so that she had forgotten to tease Ling Han. Joking around about what? Ling Han asked in astonishment. So you're saying that you've already memorized the unique characteristics of 400,000 godly medicines? Lin Yuqi asked. Ling Han finally understood what was going on. Although he had spent over 200 years familiarizing himself with these godly medicines, only half a year had passed in the outside world. Memorizing the unique qualities of 400,000 godly medicines in just half a year was indeed a stunning feat. However, he had already revealed this to them, so he couldn't take his own words back. He nodded in confirmation. You're either lying, or you're a true genius, Lin Yuqi exclaimed. I started studying godly medicines when I was 8 years old, Han Xinyan said. In the past 106,000 years, I've never stopped studying them, not even for a day. However, up until now, I've only managed to grasp the unique qualities of 270,000 godly medicines, yet I'm already regarded as a prodigy. Ling Han was stunned. What kind of brain do you have? You only managed to memorize the unique qualities of 270,000 godly medicines in over 100,000 years. Hang on. How can the Treasure Forest Pavilion raise such also-rans? Moreover, Han Xinyan is indeed talented in the area of alchemy. I've seen her talents with my own eyes. So, the problem definitely doesn't lie with her. Rather, it lies with me. Indeed, Ling Han was far too freakish. He was the alchemy emperor, so did he also possess a supreme talent when it came to memorizing godly medicines? This was the only plausible explanation. Let me test you. Lin Yuqi randomly retrieved a godly medicine, and asked, "What's this?" Ling Han took a glance, and immediately replied, "Blazing Sun Heart Lotus." Like she did half a year ago, Lin Yuqi shredded this godly medicine into tens of thousands of pieces before saying, "Put it back together." Ling Han casually waved his hand, and the shredded pieces of the godly medicine immediately started to dance in the air. His hands became a blur as he reconstructed the godly medicine. As he did so, he used his origin power to hold all the pieces together. It wasn't long before the silhouette of a divine lotus appeared. Then, it gradually became more and more detailed, until it was finally reconstructed back together. Lin Yuqi and Han Xinyan both examined the godly medicine carefully. However, looks of astonishment quickly spread over their faces. Sure enough, there wasn't a single mistake. Again, Lin Yuqi retrieved several more godly medicines as she continued to test Ling Han. There were some godly medicines that Ling Han didn't recognize, and they would skip over these directly. However, if he recognized the godly medicine, he would be able to reconstruct it rapidly and without any mistake. There was a bright glimmer in Lin Yuqi's eyes. She only knew that Ling Han was extremely talented in alchemy. Unexpectedly, he was even more talented when it came to memorizing and understanding godly medicines. She had truly plucked out a gem. She turned around and used the power of regulations to obstruct Ling Han's senses. When she turned back to face him, there was already a handful of shredded godly medicines in her hands. They were all mixed in together. How many different kinds of godly medicines are in my hands? What are they respectively? She asked. She had clearly raised the difficulty of her tests. Ling Han identified them one by one, and in the end, there were only 3 godly medicines that he couldn't name. He put the pieces of these godly medicines aside, and said, "I definitely haven't studied these godly medicines yet." Lin Yuqi and Han Xinyan were already numb with shock. They were both experienced in this field, so of course they had also learned how to identify godly medicines before. However, even if they could recognize all of these godly medicines, they definitely couldn't name them as quickly as Ling Han had. His comprehensive grasp over the intricacies of these godly medicines was as if he had completely seared the images of them into his mind. Otherwise, the external appearance of these godly medicines was far too similar, thus making them incredibly difficult to differentiate. This was especially the case when only looking at their shredded pieces. All of these things meant that it was extremely easy to misidentify the godly medicines. However, Ling Han was completely unaffected by these challenges. One had to realize that Lin Yuqi had purposefully shredded 10 godly medicines that were extremely similar in form and quality, yet Ling Han hadn't made a single mistake when identifying them. "Let's up the difficulty again," Lin Yuqi said. She retrieved 100 godly medicines, all of which Ling Han recognized. She then shredded them and mixed them up before placing them on the table. "Reconstruct them." Ling Han smiled faintly. He waved his hand and swept all of these shredded pieces into the air. He then swept his gaze over them, his eyes quivering slightly as he did so. He had already memorized all of the pieces that he had seen. His brain started to whir, rapidly piecing the shredded godly medicines back together. Ling Han was indeed talented when it came to identifying and memorizing godly medicines. When he was still in the lower realm, he could memorize any godly medicine with a single glance. It was just that he had never been tested in such a way before, having to reconstruct several godly medicines after they were shredded into tens of thousands of pieces. Following the rise in his cultivation level, his divine sense also became more and more powerful. Otherwise, there was simply no way that he could simulate in his mind the reconstruction of 100 godly medicines at once. One had to realize that there were over 1 million shredded pieces. He practiced the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, so the might and resilience of his divine sense were both above his cultivation level. As such, he was able to detect and consider extremely tiny variations. This gave him even more confidence. Ling Han continued to reconstruct the godly medicines, making them more and more complete. Lin Yuqi and Han Xinyan were both wide-eyed with astonishment. Even their dainty mouths were hanging open in shock. This was especially the case with Lin Yuqi, who had even stuck her tongue out to lick her alluring lips. She was instinctively trying to tempt him, even while experiencing such deep astonishment as expected of this bewitching woman. It wasn't long before Ling Han stopped his movements. He had already completed the task. "You're an absolute freak," Lin Yuqi exclaimed. She exhaled slowly, a delightful glimmer in her eyes. Ling Han's smooth and flowing motions had been surprisingly pleasing to the eye. In fact, she even felt a twang in her heart. Meanwhile, Han Xinyan couldn't hide her admiration for him, saying, "I need to spend at least 10 million years more before I can reach your level. Brat, join our Lin clan." Lin Yuqi's eyes were glowing brightly, and she said, "What do you say? How about I betroth Xinyan to you?" "Auntie you!" Han Xinyan exclaimed. Her face instantly flushed red. Ling Han laughed, and said, "Madam, you sure know how to joke." Upon hearing Ling Han's reply, Han Xinyan's expression involuntarily changed slightly. Women were indeed strange. It was fine when they rejected others, yet when they were the ones being rejected, they would feel extremely uncomfortable and uneasy. "What's so bad about me?" they would think. Lin Yuqi squinted her eyes seductively as she shuffled closer to Ling Han. A pleasant fragrance blew over, and she flashed him a charming smile. "Little brother, do you like women who are more mature? Maybe someone like this sister? Auntie you." Han Xinyan hurriedly tried to drag this bewitching woman away. She was acting far too brazenly. She had just tried to market her, and now she was even trying to sell herself. How embarrassing. "Your breasts are small, so there's no room for you to speak," Ling Yuqi said as she pushed Han Xinyan aside. She then puffed her chest out as if expressing her dominance. Indeed, her breasts undulated beautifully, their shape full and filled with a mesmerizing allure. Ling Han simply smiled, and said, "I already have a wife. If Madam wants to enter the Ling family, you can only become the 22nd mistress." "Wasn't it the 19th? Lin Yuqi said with a seductive laugh, not trying to hide her undulating breasts at all. She didn't mind giving Ling Han some eye candy. Ling Han wasn't distracted by this, and he replied, "Someone as licentious as me will definitely wed several more mistresses in half a year's time." Han Xinyan didn't know whether this was true or not, so she couldn't help but scorn Ling Han in her mind. Ling Han was indeed supremely talented in alchemy, yet his character was quite depraved. "You have 22 wives. Do you have enough time and energy to please them all?" Upon thinking of this, her pretty face involuntarily flushed red again. What did this have to do with her? Chapter 1366, Hungyun Branch. Chapter 1366, Hungyun Branch. Lin Yuqi and Han Xinyan both believed that Ling Han could indeed identify over 400,000 godly medicines. They didn't test him anymore, and instead started to fill him in on the details of the clan competition. This way, he could prepare himself for what was to come. Just like Lin Yuqi had tested him before, the clan competition also tested the competitors in a similar manner. Each competitor had to take 4 examinations identifying godly medicines, reconstructing medicinal ingredients, identifying mixed medicinal ingredients, and finally pill refinement. The competitors would receive a score for each of the 4 rounds, though the weighting of each round was different. For example, the first round only made up 10% of the total score, while the final round of pill refinement made up 50% of the total score. After all, this was the most important ability of an alchemist. The carriage continued to whiz through the lands. After 13 days, they finally arrived at Azure Rain City. This was the headquarters of the Treasure Forest Pavilion, and the ancestral lands of the Lin clan, Shi clan, Han clan, and Huang clan all were located within this city. However, what the Treasure Forest Pavilion was famous for was its alchemy. The Treasure Forest Pavilion exuded an aura of might and wealth. In reality, however, the Treasure Forest Pavilion wasn't weak in terms of cultivation, either. In fact, the four major clans all had Eternal River tier elites within their ranks. Otherwise, there was simply no way that they could guard their massive wealth. However, in terms of how many Eternal River tier elites each clan had, and in terms of what specific cultivation level they had reached, this was a closely guarded secret of the Treasure Forest Pavilion. On the surface, the Cloud Apex planet only had a measly 20 or so Eternal River tier elites. However, as Ling Han learned more and more about the different forces, he was certain that this was definitely a severe underestimation of how many Eternal River tier elites there actually were. It was more probable that there were 20 elites at the consummate level of the Eternal River tier. Anyhow, Azure Rain City was a holy land for alchemy. Each day, carriage after carriage of alchemical pills would be dispatched from this city to numerous cities throughout the two imperial empires. Of course, Azure Rain City wasn't far from the Blue Cloud Imperial Empire, either. In fact, the Treasure Forest Pavilion had built its headquarters here because it had been attracted by this location's convenience. In this city, almost every family was involved in the business of alchemy. Even if they weren't alchemists, they would be medicinal farmers or medicinal harvesters. As such, there was a complete and massive supply chain here. The Treasure Forest Pavilion had a history of over 1 billion years on the Cloud Apex planet. During this time, they had even experienced the destruction of an imperial empire, as well as the rise of another imperial empire. However, they hadn't been affected at all. They had continued to earn huge amounts of true origin stones, just as they still continue to do so today. After all, regardless of who was in power, cultivation was still heavily reliant on alchemical pills. In any case, it was rumored that the rise of the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire was partly thanks to the support that they had received from the Treasure Forest Pavilion. According to hearsay, the Treasure Forest Pavilion had donated a huge sum of true origin stones to support the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire. Otherwise, the previous Imperial Empire wouldn't necessarily have fallen. Moreover, after so many years of development, the four major clans had also branched out into a massive network that contained numerous smaller branches. Furthermore, after several usurpations by powerful branch families, the four major clans already didn't have any notion of a main branch. Whichever branch was stronger was whichever branch wielded power. Tides would turn, and power would also shift hands. Right now, the leader of the Lin clan was the Beisha branch. They had already enjoyed this position for over 9 million years. This was because the Beisha branch had a level 16 alchemist, allowing them to suppress all of the other 99 branches. Lin Yuchi belonged to the Arnuan branch, and this was a branch that was ranked near the bottom among all of the branches of the Lin clan. The strongest alchemist in the Arnuan branch was only a level 13 alchemist. Moreover, this alchemist had only just reached the Eternal River tier. It was also because of this that a prodigy like Lin Yuchi could wield so much power at such a young age. She had traveled to Big Trade City to search for external help in the hopes that the Arnuan branch could achieve a better standing in the clan competition this time around. That way, they would be able to send more branch members into the Mystery Realm. Entering the Mystery Realm was a huge opportunity that could turn a branch family's fortunes. Otherwise, the Arnuan branch could only continue to wallow in its incompetence until the day that it was finally disowned by the clan. In fact, there were far more than 100 branches in the Lin clan. However, only the 100 most powerful branches had the right to have an official existence in the Lin clan. The weak would be eliminated by the strong, and this was a rule that wouldn't change for all eternity. Because the Arnuan branch wasn't powerful enough, Ling Han and the others could only stay in a place that was relatively old and derelict. This was unlike the branches ranked near the top, where the courtyard of any random member was already larger than the total of their 3 residences. Moreover, looking at the other branches, they all had 10 people participating in this competition. This was the upper limit for how many people could compete from any one branch. However, the Arnuan branch only had 2 competitors in Ling Han and Han Xinyan. This was a clear sign of their desperate situation. More importantly, both of these competitors were external helpers. Shockingly, the unveils branch hadn't been able to find any branch member who was talented enough to compete. Lin Yuqi was also a prodigy, yet most of her talent was in the field of cultivation. Although she was also talented in identifying medicinal ingredients, she was a complete amateur when it came to actual pill refinement. However, pill refinement was the biggest part of this competition, so those who were poor in this area were destined to receive bad results. After settling in, Ling Han immediately entered the Black Tower. Right now, he was extremely interested in learning about the unique qualities of different medicinal ingredients. Peng! There was a huge boom as the main door of their courtyard was kicked open. 5 people appeared, one of them a sturdy middle-aged man. He appeared especially casual, and his entire upper body was naked. His thick chest hair quivered in the wind, and it truly looked a little too lively. Behind him were 4 youths, 3 men and 1 woman. They all had an air of arrogance about them, and it was as if they were the favored sons and daughters of heaven and earth. Lin Yuqi and Han Xinyan had been chatting in the living room, and they immediately dashed out upon hearing the loud commotion. Upon seeing the collapsed front door, their expressions changed drastically. Lin Feng, are you crazy? There was no sign of charm or seductiveness on Lin Yuqi's face as she roared at the middle-aged man. A look of disgust spread across her face as she glanced at the thick hair on his chest. These 5 people were naturally from the Lin clan as well. They belonged to the unveils branch, and this branch was powerful enough to rank in the top 10 out of the 100 official branches. The middle-aged man was called Lin Feng, and he was the leader of the unveils branches group for this competition. His cultivation was at the medium extreme of the heavenly body tier. Lin Feng greedily stared at Lin Yuqi's shapely breasts. He had traveled to the unveils branch several thousand years ago, and he had come across Lin Yuqi by coincidence. It was from that time that he had started to lust after this seductive beauty. He had asked for her hand in marriage, yet Lin Yuqi had expressed absolutely no interest in him. However, he had been apprehensive while in the unveils branch's territory, so he hadn't dared to make a huge scene. This time, he was leading the unveils branch's team for this clan competition. After learning that Lin Yuqi had also come here, he couldn't resist his urge to come over. Yuqi, your unveils branch is destined to fall into insignificance, so why stay in that futureless branch? Why don't you marry me and enter the unveils branch? The unveils branch is one of the top 10 branches, and we can offer you countless cultivation resources. You should know that this is the best choice for you, Lin Feng said earnestly. It was a shame that he continued to leer at Lin Yuqi's face, breasts, and legs as he said this. No matter how one looked at him, he was a damned disgusting pervert. Regardless of how weak my unveils branch is, it's still got absolutely nothing to do with you. Lin Yuqi was indignant as she pointed at the main door, and shouted, "Scram! Heh, is there any need for this?" Lin Feng was an extremely shameless person. Lin Yuqi had rejected him before, so it was only natural that she would reject him again. He chuckled, and said, "There are 3 more days until the competition begins, so why don't we let the young uns warm up first? How about some sparring?" He sneered coldly in his mind. This time, he was definitely going to show that woman. Chapter 1367 Overbearing Attitude. Chapter 1367 Overbearing Attitude. There was fury on Lin Yuqi's beautiful face. She wasn't afraid of sparring, yet Lin Feng had kicked their door down and berated them before asking to spar. This was still called sparring? If you want to spar, we can see each other's abilities in 3 days' time. Now, hurry up and scram, she shouted in irritation. Lin Feng laughed loudly, and said, "Then I'll take it that you're admitting defeat. Unveils branch. You're all trash and beaters," a green-robed man from the unveils branch shouted with a sneer. "Heh, brother Xiefeng, they're indeed trash. However, those people definitely aren't beaters. After all, they don't have a third leg down there," another young man from the unveils branch said. His robe was azure in color, and there was the image of an alchemy cauldron sewed onto its back. "Ha ha ha, Jianye is correct," the other man and woman said as they clapped their hands in approval. They appeared extremely arrogant, and it was clear that they didn't have an ounce of respect for Lin Yuqi or Han Xinyan. Han Xinyan shook in fury. She was just about to step forward and challenge these four youths. However, Lin Yuqi extended her arm and held her back. This kind of sparring would be completely meaningless. After all, these people had clearly come to humiliate them. There was a menacing edge to her voice as she said, "If you can't control the mouths of those four wild dogs, don't blame me for being ruthless with them." Lin Feng shrugged and said, "Yuqi, you're far too domineering. Are they not even allowed to speak now? In any case, this is a matter for the Hongyun branch. What right does the Anyuan branch have to interfere with us?" "She's fairly good looking, though," Lin Jianye said as he stared at Han Xinyan. "She has the right to become my maid." More like a mistress to service you alongside your wife, no?" Lin Xiefeng said wantonly. "It's just that her breasts are too small. They won't feel too good in the hands," Lin Jianye said. He purposefully made a reaching and grabbing motion as he said this. He was as nasty as could be. Han Xinyan was shaking in rage, and Lin Yuqi's eyes had also become icy cold. "Pa!" She suddenly made a slapping motion, and a large hand that was formed from origin power materialized in the air and struck Lin Jianye's face. "Pu!" Lin Jianye spat out a mouthful of blood as well as 4 broken teeth. His hair was a mess, and he appeared extremely disheveled at this moment. A sly smile tugged at the corners of Lin Feng's mouth as if he had succeeded in his plan. However, he quickly hid this smile and said with a serious expression, "Lin Yuqi, as a senior, what are you trying to do by picking on your juniors? There's no other way around this. I have to teach you a lesson." He had purposefully had these youths infuriate Lin Yuqi such that she would lash out in anger. That way, he would have a legitimate excuse to target her. "You've beaten my juniors, so I naturally have to step forward to capture you." No matter how one looked at this, he was the one in the right. Moreover, after he had ravaged Lin Yuqi, all he would need to do was hold firm in his innocence and claim that it was she who was trying to slander him. In any case, that would merely be his word against hers. In any case, after ravaging her a few more times, perhaps Lin Yuqi would submit to him. Firstly, she was already at a disadvantage when it came to this because she was a woman. Secondly, this woman clearly looked like a promiscuous B***tch. As long as he satisfied her lust, how could she not completely submit to him? He immediately reached over with his hands. At the same time, 2 heavenly bodies materialized behind him, each radiating with a formidable aura. He was going to capture Lin Yuqi as quickly as he could. Otherwise, if he looked at this seductive beauty for too long, blood would definitely spurt from his nose. Upon hearing Lin Feng's words, Lin Yuqi immediately realized that she had fallen into his trap. However, this wasn't a hidden trap. Instead, it was an overt trap. They had already humiliated her and Han Xinyan to such an extent, so how could she have held back? Yet, by not being able to hold back, she had fallen into it. She roared softly as she waved her sleeve, sending a boundless divine light toward Lin Feng's large hands. Peng! They exchanged a blow, and shock waves instantly surged through the surroundings, flattening the entire courtyard. Fortunately, this was the ancestral grounds of the Lin clan, meaning that there were powerful formations protecting the city. Otherwise, just this exchange alone would have destroyed the entire Azure Rain city. Lin Yuqi, a battle in the sky. Lin Feng roared. Although there were formations protecting the city, they would still cause significant damage if they fought with their full power. He simply wanted to make this woman his own, not destroy the ancestral grounds of the Lin clan. Right now, Lin Yuqi already had no option but to battle him. She gritted her teeth and flew into the sky after Lin Feng. The two of them continued to exchange blows, moving further and further from the obliterated courtyard. Before long, they had already become 2 small dots in the sky. Han Xinyan was incredibly worried. Lin Feng was at the medium extreme of the heavenly body tier, while Lin Yuqi was only at the low extreme of the heavenly body tier. Their strength was on 2 completely different levels. Thus, it would be impossible for Lin Yuqi to overcome the gap between their power, even if she was a 2-star genius. Ling Han immediately sprung into her mind. Although he was only at the low extreme of the heavenly body tier, He could definitely improve the situation if he teamed up with Lin Yuqi. Oi, 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 flat-chested beauty, where are you trying to go? Lin Jianye and the 4 others surrounded Han Xinyan, preventing her from leaving and calling for help. They naturally didn't know that the helper that Han Xinyan wanted to call was actually buried under the rubble. Han Xinyan was fairly astonished. Why hadn't Ling Han shown himself yet? He had been struck by all that falling rubble. She furrowed her beautiful brows, and asked, "What do you people want to do?" "What do we want to do?" Lin Jianye couldn't help but laugh loudly. "Little beauty, you're far too unreserved. You open your mouth, and the first thing that comes out is whether we want to do you or not. How slutty." Han Xinyan's face instantly became as white as a sheet. She clenched her fists, and shouted, "Just how shameless can you people be?" "Oi, oi, oi," it was him who had spoken just then. "So what's it got to do with us?" the woman from the Hongyun branch said. "In any case, you're the one who's trying to seduce men, yet you still have the face to question the shamelessness of others. I've truly never seen someone as slutty as you. I'm definitely not daring enough to marry such women. However, toying around with them is no problem at all." There was a lewd look on Lin Xiefeng's face. Although Han Xinyan's chest was a bit flat, her appearance was top-notch, enough to make his heart beat in excitement. Anyhow, why were they so daring? The reason behind this was extremely simple. The Anyuan branch was far too weak. The weak were consumed by the strong, and the strong were the ones who ruled. This was the revered truth of the Lin clan. In fact, it was because of this belief that they had grown more and more powerful by the generation. Of course, these people were definitely taking things too far by bullying another branch family on the ancestral grounds. However, they were the Hongyun branch, one of the top 10 branches of the Lin clan. As long as they didn't kill anyone, who would dare to punish them? Moreover, they were only using words to attack others. It wasn't as if they were actually carrying through with their threats or anything. Han Xinyan couldn't take the humiliation any longer, and she immediately drew her sword and charged at the 4 people. She wasn't weak, and her attack instantly forced Lin Xiefeng and the 3 others to retreat. However, her opponents weren't weak, either, and they immediately launched a counterattack after finding their footing. Although the 4 major clans of the Treasure Forest Pavilion specialized in alchemy, cultivation was also something that was extremely valued. After all, without the support of cultivation, one wouldn't be able to refine higher-level alchemical pills. Lin Xiefeng and the 3 others were more so prodigies in cultivation. They were all at least 1-star geniuses. If their cultivation levels were equivalent, none of them would be weaker than Han Xinyan. So, with this being the case, how could they be threatened now that they were teaming up against her? Han Xinyan was quickly forced onto her back foot. All she could do was defend with all her might. However, the 4 members of the Hongyun branch were intent on humiliating her. Their strikes weren't fatal, nor did they cause her any severe wounds. However, Han Xinyan's clothes were continuously damaged and sliced off by their attacks. Large swathes of her jade-like skin were revealed. Her hair was also extremely disheveled at this moment. However, they wouldn't dare to kill her here. Everyone was here for the clan competition right now, so if news of them killing a fellow competitor got out, their cultivation would definitely be crippled, even if they weren't sentenced to death. However, having their cultivation crippled was as good as killing them. So, they simply chose to humiliate her. Anyhow, what could she do about this? Anger blazed inside Han Xinyan's eyes. A resolute look flashed across her face, and she suddenly slashed her sword toward her own neck. She couldn't stand this humiliation, so she was going to kill herself in resistance and protest. With her being forced to death by the 4 members of the Hongyun branch, Lin Xiefeng and the others definitely wouldn't get off lightly. Chapter 1368, Drugging the Opponent. Chapter 1368, Drugging the Opponent. Crap. Lin Xiefeng and the others were all astounded. They hadn't imagined that Han Xinyan would actually be so drastic. She had merely suffered some humiliation, yet she was actually going to kill herself. They hurriedly tried to stop her. However, their strength was essentially on the same level, so how could they stop her in time? The sword arrived before Han Xinyan's neck, and Lin Xiefeng and the others all felt their vision go dark as if they were going to faint. Although it was Han Xinyan who would die, their future wouldn't be much brighter. Han Xinyan shut her eyes. She didn't want to look at those 4 disgusting people as she died. Pa! The sword slashed down, yet it didn't cut into Han Xinyan's neck. Instead, a large hand had suddenly shot over and grabbed the blade of the sword. This was a level 8 god tool, yet it was surprisingly unable to cut the skin of the hand that was gripping it. This hand belonged to none other than Ling Han. He had been cultivating in the Black Tower just then, so he naturally hadn't been disturbed by the collapsing buildings. It was only because of Small Tower's warning that he had come out in time and saved Han Xinyan's life. Why have you only come out now? Han Xinyan opened her eyes, and tears involuntarily started to flow down her cheeks when she saw Ling Han. Just how much humiliation had she endured? Did he understand? Ling Han's expression was cold, and he nodded before saying, "Sorry." He took his coat off and wrapped it around Han Xinyan's body. He then turned to face Lin Xiefeng and the 3 others. The expression in his eyes was so cold that it could freeze someone into an ice statue. He didn't have any special feelings for Han Xinyan, and they were just normal friends. However, since she was his friend, he couldn't allow her to be humiliated by any random person. "And who are you?" the woman from the Hongyun branch asked in disdain. Ling Han had restrained his aura, so she naturally couldn't detect Ling Han's true cultivation. "Pa." Ling Han lashed out with his palm, and one side of the woman's face instantly started to swell and become red. Her once seductive appearance instantly became especially ugly. "You're also a woman, so don't you feel any shame picking on another woman like this? Why you dare to slap me?" The woman instantly jumped in anger as if someone had stepped on her tail. She practiced both alchemy and cultivation, and she was extremely talented in both. Moreover, she was also a beauty who was pursued by many people in her clan. In fact, even her seniors adored her a little too much. Yet, right now, she had actually been slapped by someone. This was unacceptable. "How dare you?" Lin Xiefeng and the other 2 men all wore dark expressions as they stared at Ling Han. "You've gone too far. I've gone too far." Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "You people will understand in a moment what going too far means. Ling Han, Auntie Yu is in danger. You need to hurry over to help her," Han Xinyan hurriedly said. She could envision what would happen if Lin Yuqi was captured. That would be an unbearable fate. Fortunately, even though Lin Feng was more powerful, it would still be fairly difficult for him to capture Lin Yuqi. He wouldn't be able to capture her any time soon. "This won't take long," Ling Han replied. He immediately charged at Lin Xiefeng and the others. "How arrogant!" Lin Xiefeng and the others roared. They all launched a counterattack. However, how could measly Sun-Moon tier cultivators withstand the might of a heavenly body tier elite? Even someone as prodigious as Ling Han had only been able to challenge elites at the early stage of the low extreme of the heavenly body tier after reaching the peak stage of the pinnacle level of the Sun-Moon tier, so how could these weaklings achieve such a feat? "Pa." Ling Han's strike landed, and his 4 opponents were all suppressed. Moreover, their clothes were all torn into shreds that flew away like butterflies in the wind. They were stark naked. "Ah!" The woman instantly started to shriek, almost fainting from anger. Although Lin Xiefeng and the 2 other men didn't shriek, they had also gone as white as a sheet. They had been stripped naked in public. How could they endure this humiliation? However, Ling Han couldn't give a toss about their feelings. With a thought, he sealed their cultivation. He then tied them up and hung them on a long bamboo pole, which he placed outside the entrance of the courtyard. With this, it was extremely likely that everyone on the ancestral grounds of the Lin clan would see their unsightly figures. "Which direction did Madam head in?" Ling Han asked Han Xinyan. Han Xinyan's face was flushed red, and she didn't dare to raise her head at all. Just then, she had accidentally glanced at someone's naked bottom. Fortunately, it was the bottom of that woman. Otherwise, she would definitely have been so disgusted that she wouldn't have been able to eat for half a year. She didn't dare to raise her head, and she simply pointed her finger in some direction. Ling Han immediately leaped into the sky and streaked toward that direction. He activated the star plucking step, treading on thin air as he dashed forward. The regulations couldn't contain him anymore, and they were instead utilized by him to raise his speed. Meanwhile, he continued to track Lin Yuchi's aura, making sure that he didn't deviate from the right direction. 5,000 kilometers away, Lin Yuchi was currently engaged in an intense battle against Lin Feng. Although her battle prowess was slightly weaker, she possessed an incredibly powerful god Tula cut of damask woven from the silk of a level 10 demonic beast, the ancient cloud silkworm. It was imbued with extremely powerful divine patterns, which allowed her to unleash battle prowess at the late stage of the medium extreme. However, Lin Feng was also very well prepared. He swallowed and spat a golden pill, and with each cycle of swallowing and spitting, his power would rise explosively. In fact, the power of his attacks had almost reached the high extreme. Fortunately, this power would only last for one trike. When he spat the golden pill out again, his power would fall back to its original level. Otherwise, if his power continued to rise unrestrainedly, there would be no need to battle at all. He would have achieved victory long ago. Even so, Lin Yuchi was still at a disadvantage. However, she was still able to hold on by the skin of her teeth. Lin Feng chuckled coldly. Tangling with Lin Yuchi was only one part of his plan. His true weapon was actually the golden pill that he was swallowing and spitting. He had imbued a strong aphrodisiac into this pill, and as long as one inhaled enough of its aura, they would become as lustful as a wild beast, even if they were a heavenly body tier elite. Moreover, in order not to raise Lin Yuchi's suspicion, he purposefully didn't cleanse the effects of the aphrodisiac from his own body, either. Anyhow, this pill was refined by him, so he already had some immunity to it anyway. When Lin Yuchi finally fell victim to him, this aphrodisiac could help bring him more excitement and arousal as well. He would be able to enjoy her with boosted vigor. After battling for a little longer, Lin Yuchi's beautiful face involuntarily flushed red as a cherry blossom. She looked incredibly beautiful and alluring, especially her watery eyes, which were so beautiful that they could hook one's soul. Her beauty was simply intoxicating. Lin Feng laughed heartily, and said, "Ha ha ha ha, Lin Yuchi, obediently submit to me." It was as if he could already see the seductive expression of Lin Yuchi as she lay under him and endured his vigorous punishment. He couldn't help but feel aroused by this, his little body hardening and rising up. Perhaps he was too intoxicated by her beauty, or perhaps this was the effect of the aphrodisiac. Lin Yuchi had only felt a little strange before, yet upon hearing his words, her expression involuntarily changed. "What on earth did you do?" Lin Feng laughed loudly, and replied, "Hehe, I merely had you inhale some aphrodisiac. It'll only add to the excitement. You're such a sultry woman, so don't tell me that you've never used this before." He felt an intense thirst, and it was as if he were about to burst. Despicable. Shameless. Lin Yuchi's eyes were red, and she didn't tangle with Lin Feng any longer. She immediately turned around and tried to flee. However, how could Lin Feng allow his prey to escape? He hurriedly dashed over to block her path. He was more powerful than her, so it was definitely a simple task to keep her from escaping. Lin Yuchi became increasingly desperate, yet her body started to betray her more and more. Her body was limp and hot, and her eyes were seductive and entrancing. Her lips were also red as fiery flames, and it was as if they were going to consume her with heat. "Ha ha ha ha. I've wanted to fuck you since several thousand years ago. Today, I'm finally going to realize my dream and taste your body." Lin Feng was extremely smug. "Is that so?" A calm voice suddenly traveled into their ears. "You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.